So in about 10 days, we're finally going to have a new Mario game that comes out. A full 3D Mario game. And I know we've had, Mario games come out intermittently, but this is one that I feel is going to be a big thing since Mario Galaxy 2, a game that we're looking at today. Now, I think by the title you can assume that what we're looking at, which is the Hell Valley Sky Tree, is something that I've sort of looked at on a very brief note when it came for a creepypasta specifically. But today I'm looking at it as a whole, something that I can look at just from the game itself, something without any creepypasta putting things into context on its terms, and something where I can look at just from what it is within the game in its context, given just that. Now, Mario Odyssey is a game that I'm really excited for. In less than 10 days, that and Assassin's Creed is coming out. Two games that I'm definitely looking forward to. But Mario Odyssey is one of those games where, in general, the 3D Mario games have always hit me personally. I love playing Super Mario 64, I loved playing Sunshine, and I love both Galaxy games. I haven't played them much past initially playing them in like one or two playthroughs, but after that, the looking back and looking at how many times I played those games and the experiences that I've had, I've realized that the best Mario games are often the ones where it gives you the 3D open world environment and a whole bunch of puzzles and collectibles to go seek out. In this case, we're looking at Mario Galaxy 2, and today we're looking at a very weird, sort of mysterious occurrence that occurs in this game and also another 3D Mario game that's also out there on the making its rounds. Now, in this case, we're looking at the Hell Valley Sky Tree. It's a creepypasta that we looked at. Now, in order to really get into proper, in order to really get a proper context out of it, we have to really look at the creepypasta, one that unfortunately isn't necessarily available. One that I tried looking for, and unfortunately, the Creepypasta Wiki, which is where I initially had read the story from, it seems like the Creepypasta Wiki just did not really care too much about showing any form of love towards the Super Mario creepypastas. In fact, gaming creepypastas sort of, because of the repetitive nature of them and the fact that they had always really been that black sheep of the creepypasta community, even though some of the most popular creepypastas that have existed are gaming ones, have always had a negative stigma attached to them, and that's usually the reason why I didn't necessarily want to keep doing creepypastas in the first place. A lot of repetition occurs in gaming creepypastas, which is something that you unfortunately can't get past. Now, looking at my own wiki, the wiki that we have for Some Ordinary Gamers, one that unfortunately I haven't really looked at even in time, which has a lot of recent activity, believe it or not, Ed and Eddie the Game, exe.exe, interesting stories in of itself. We're looking at Going Beyond Hell Valley. Now, these are creepypastas that I believe I have not read, because if I had read them, they'd have showed up in some form of a red category. This one is, let me tell you about myself. I enjoy reading creepypastas and watching videos on eerie video game secrets. Most creepypastas are pretty entertaining, and I always thought they were just fake. Oh, how I was so wrong. One gaming thing that I recently heard about was the Hell Valley Sky Trees from Super Mario Galaxy 2. Now, of course, we can read this all we want, but let's go look a little bit further into what we're looking at over here. They didn't look normal either. The eyes were a bright red, and they had disturbing lamprey-like mouths. Then the death music played as the screen went to black, leaving the red eyes to leave last. Instead of me simply losing a life and getting back to playing, a message appeared. Seek no further, thou foolish man. You can see why gaming creepypastas sort of were looked down upon after a while. I'm not, saying that this one or anyone like it is bad. It's just, you can see where you go from the game to some OC-like fanfiction territory. Now, the Hell Valley Sky Trees is a real, in fact, thing. It's not creepypasta. It's actually it's actually a real Easter egg from the actual Galaxy games themselves. More specifically, Super Mario Galaxy 2, one of the finest Wii games that's out there. If you play the game and go to World 5, you'll actually come across a galaxy called the Shiverburn Galaxy. At some point in this galaxy, you can look far up. You can look through the free look feature of the game up into the skybox, really, and come across a certain viewing of these things staring at you from far off in the distance, looking at you from above this glacier pass. Now, zooming into the image, which is how most people actually get the image in any way, shape, or form, where they get an actual raw screenshot and they zoom in through post-production, because there's no actual way to zoom in just via the game in of itself. You actually have to zoom in through any form of, whether it's Photoshop or, dragging the photo into Premiere, or just MS Painting, zooming it up, whatever you want to do, that's how you view the actual image. You can look at these three figures who are staring at you with these blanket eyes, fresh from far away. Now, looking into the actual in-game files, they actually have the name Hell Valley Sky Tree, or Beyond Hell Valley, which is actually the internal name for the galaxy. Internal name being that the name they used in the development process of the game, the name that actually carried out in the internal game files. And it's not an uncommon practice. If you ever look at many video games, for example, something like, say, multiplayer, one of the names for a multiplayer map publicly might be, Apple, but in the development it might be, Orange or something like that, something internally different for just the game team to have in of itself. Now you might be wondering, a game like Super Mario, a child-friendly game, having Hell Valley Skytree or Beyond Hell Valley. Now, I do have to remind you, the game is from Japan, and the Japanese are a little bit more different than we are. If you look at things that they consider the norm, it's pretty far off from what we would do in our side of the world. I think looking at a game like Shin Megami Tensei is proof enough. Although that game was intended more for a mature audience than, say, Mario, but the point still stands. Japan's a little more different than we are. But again, for a game like Mario to have a Hell Valley or Hell Valley Skytree is a little interesting, and it definitely shows that maybe the development team had some goofs and gaffs in it that it just didn't carry over to the main game. It's something that happens commonly whether you're in any industry. Behind the scenes, developers can be a lot more different, and they can put in a lot of jokes into a game file that are more internal references just for themselves. Now, if you look at a World 4-4 in Super Mario 3D Land on the 3DS, not talking about the Wii U version of the game, which are two separate games if I'm not mistaken, World 4-4 is actually a Ghost House world. Ghost Houses are pretty common in Mario games. They've been there since Super Mario World, and basically what they are, they're like platformer puzzler sections, whereas the standard goal of a Mario level is to go left to right. If you ever look at the course map for a Mario game, these ones are a little non-linear. There's certain puzzles, certain doors, certain variables to unlock before reaching a further part of the map, and that's how ghost houses work. So by going into the ghost house section, you're able to go from you're basically solving a platformer puzzle. Though that's just the gameplay aspect of it in general. By the time you get to the end of World 4-4, by the time you get to the flagpole, the checkpoint, the final trigger of ending the actual mission, you can look far off in the background of the map. There is a similar like figure with the same circular eye staring right at you. Or not right at you, right through the forested area of the map. Now, the game was developed by the same team in of itself, so maybe this was just something that they were carrying on over, a bit of legacy, so to speak. But it's still odd to see some form of connectivity between Mario Galaxy 2 and this. But we're going to use emulation tools such as Dolphin and see if we can sort of go beyond using a free camera hack tool that's already existed in the game in of itself. So let's go check out if we can do what we're trying to do and see if we get anywhere with the Hell Valley Skytrees. So moving on to actually figuring out just what's behind this, we decided to use Dolphin as the emulation tool for this. Not only is it the most stable GameCube Wii emulator, it's probably the only one as far as my knowledge consists of. Now Dolphin's been around for a long time. You can look up just how long it's been here compared to the other emulators that I've shown you on this channel, the recent one being RPCS3. This one's been around forever almost, and it's on numerous different platforms, not just on the PC, but it's actually got stable emulation just running off of Android cell phones, so to speak. Now, the PC version of it has numerous graphical options, which we're definitely going to be using to see just what Hell Valley could be, or at least try to get into it as far as we can. Something that I don't think I've seen anywhere else. So let's be the first frontiers into this, or at least look at it from our perspective. Now, in this case, if you've noticed, the game footage looks a lot cleaner using the in this video, and that's simply due to the fact that I'm using Dolphin's resolution tools to basically bump it higher than the initial Wii's resolution, which is incredibly low. The whole 480p world was left a long time ago. Now, this is running at about 4K resolution, so it explains how sharp certain things are. Texture's really sharp, things are really scaled well. The game's art style definitely helps too, just due to the fact that Mario Galaxy isn't one of those games to necessarily use a realistic tone. The style that it's using is just coming across really well, no matter how you translate it. So the tools that are within Dolphin's utility belt really align to looking at textures as a whole. Yeah, a lot of debugging tools exist, but one notable feature that really does exist is something called Free Look. Now, as soon as you enable this, you're able to use your right mouse button and drag it around in the in-game window and basically move the camera to your will. Now, using the Shift WASD keys, you're able to move it around, and using Shift 2 and Shift 1, you're able to adjust the modifier for speed. So When I used the speed modifier and the movement of the free look, I went into the first person camera of Mario Galaxy, which you can do by pressing the up D-pad a couple times in the actual game. And by doing that, I was able to zoom in as far as I could. Now, looking into it, there's nothing beyond this texture data, but it's a really interesting showcase as to how the camera system really does work in Mario Galaxy, or really in all Mario games. Because I think as far as Sunshine isn't considered, most of the Mario games really just use this camera system where it's only what Nintendo wants you to see. So if you're seeing that rectangular square, which looks like the end of a camera lens, I guess the best way to describe it, it's because that's how the camera positions itself. Now you can go past that texture as you're zooming in, as you can see when I move the camera left to the right, it sort of distorts really off just because it's really just a 2D picture data trying to at least fit in this 3D world. Going past the bounds, you can see that no matter how far you go into, you can't get any closer. That's just the raw skybox. And ultimately, that's where the camera trickery ends for the Hell Valley Sky Trees. Looking into the texture decode, yeah, there are individual textures for it. Enabling that debugging option shows that two squares pop up to the left of the silhouette, which indicates that in of itself, it's a different texture entirely in the skybox. So it is interesting to see that this was designed as separate to the actual core skybox in of itself, as far as I can tell, just using the debugging tools, and that at one point maybe this hosted a bigger thing than it initially is in the final build. And ladies and gentlemen, that was another episode of Haunted Gaming. Now we've looked at ARGs, we've looked at numerous games, we looked at games in of itself being just creepy or having creepy undertones. And considering that Mario Odyssey is coming out in less than 10 days, it's kind of nice to look at a game similar to it, a game in its relative relative release tree, rather, and sort of familiarize ourselves with it and look at something a little bit weird about the Mario games than just being kid-friendly games. I'm playing through all of them up until the release of Odyssey, so it's kind of nice to sort of break from playing the games and look at them from a more analytical light. And hey, if you ever want to look at things a little more deeper and a little more personal, then feel free to use any tools to look into game files, or hell, even use the emulation tools that we have to break into certain places where you're not allowed to. There's whole channels dedicated to it on YouTube. Go give it a search. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike it if you dislike it. This is me, Mutahar, and I am